You ever get that feeling that something big is happening, but no one in power wants you to notice it? Because right now, that's exactly what's happening out west. Saskatchewan's name is suddenly popping up in political circles in both Washington and Ottawa, and no one's giving straight answers. Now, I'm not saying there is a secret deal, but the timing, the silence, and the reactions? Let's just say it's raising a lot of eyebrows. Over the past few weeks, Premier Scott Moe's schedule has looked unusual. Private meetings, closed-door sessions, unannounced trips, and all of it happening while relations between Ottawa and the western provinces continue to sour. And just when it seemed like things had cooled off after Alberta's latest standoff, Saskatchewan quietly stepped onto the international stage, with Washington watching very closely. So, what's really going on here? Let's back up a bit. The U.S. has been eyeing Canada's energy and resource sectors for years: oil, potash, uranium, you name it. But lately, Saskatchewan has become the crown jewel. The province holds massive reserves that could make or break the next phase of North America's energy independence. And under President Trump's second administration, energy independence isn't just a slogan, it's strategy. Meanwhile, Ottawa, led by Prime Minister Carney, has been doubling down on green policies and carbon transition programs that the western provinces argue are strangling their economies. Saskatchewan, in particular, has been fighting tooth and nail against what it calls federal overreach. But here's where things get strange. Instead of escalating the fight in public, Scott Moe seems to have gone quiet. Too quiet. And that's when Washington started paying attention. Around mid-October, U.S. officials were reportedly seen in Rejina. No official visit, no public announcement. Just economic consultations. And at the same time, Saskatchewan's Trade Ministry released a cryptic statement about enhancing cross-border cooperation on infrastructure and energy security. No names. No dates. No details. Coincidence? Maybe. But Ottawa wasn't even mentioned. And that's when people started whispering, is Saskatchewan cutting its own deal? Because think about it, if you're Washington and you're trying to secure reliable access to resources while tensions with China and Europe are rising, who do you turn to? The federal government bogged down in regulation and politics, or a province that's desperate for trade, rich in minerals, and ready to push back against Ottawa's policies? Now, to be absolutely clear, nothing has been confirmed. There's no official agreement, no public statement. But something definitely shifted. And Ottawa's reaction, or rather, its lack of one, speaks volumes. When asked about the growing speculation, the Prime Minister's office gave one of those perfectly vague responses, you know the kind, about ongoing intergovernmental collaboration and shared prosperity. That's political code for, we don't want to talk about it. Meanwhile, inside Saskatchewan, local officials are tight-lipped. But there's been movement. The provincial government recently announced new investment incentives targeting foreign strategic partners, and one of those categories specifically mentions energy infrastructure and advanced manufacturing. The same sectors Washington has been heavily lobbying to expand under Trump's North American Security Plan. So let's connect a few dots. Trump's administration wants to secure North American energy. Saskatchewan wants to bypass Ottawa's environmental red tape. Both sides want to move fast. And both sides, coincidentally, are avoiding public scrutiny. You see where this is going? Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. A few days ago, a senior official from the U.S. Department of Energy gave a speech in North Dakota about regional energy partnerships with states and provinces aligned with American energy goals. He didn't name names, but he did mention a key Canadian partner directly across the border. Guess which province sits right across North Dakota? Saskatchewan. And yet, not a single federal representative from Ottawa was in that meeting. Not one. So, either Ottawa didn't know, or they weren't invited. That's what's making people in political circles nervous. Because if Saskatchewan is indeed exploring a parallel partnership with Washington, even just at the economic or research level, that would completely shift the power dynamic inside Canada. It would mean a province is taking matters into its own hands, directly negotiating with a foreign power on economic development. Something that's technically not illegal, but definitely controversial. And maybe that's why Ottawa has been so quiet. Because what do you do when one of your provinces starts playing its own game, especially when that game involves the White House? The official story, of course, is that these are just regional cooperation talks. Saskatchewan wants investment, the US wants stability, and everyone's just chatting. But insiders are calling it the most opaque period in federal-provincial relations in over a decade. One source described it as a conversation Ottawa wasn't supposed to overhear. Now remember, Scott Moe has always positioned himself as a defender of provincial sovereignty. He's publicly said multiple times that Saskatchewan should have more control over its own resources, its own taxes, and even its own policing. He's not exactly shy about standing up to Ottawa. But this time, he's not standing at a podium, he's operating in silence. And silence, in politics, is rarely meaningless. Let's not forget, during the last round of US-Canada trade negotiations, the provinces were mostly kept on the sidelines. That didn't sit well with Western leaders. So maybe this is about balance. Maybe it's about showing Ottawa that Saskatchewan doesn't need permission to protect its interests. Or maybe it's something else. Trump's America has been openly supportive of what it calls direct partnerships with regional governments. It bypasses bureaucracy, cuts red tape, and lets Washington move faster. But it also undermines national unity. If one province starts making understandings or memorandums without federal oversight, it sends a message that Ottawa's authority isn't absolute anymore. Now, here's the part that nobody wants to say out loud. If Saskatchewan were quietly exploring a direct economic understanding with Washington, even informally, it could open the door for Alberta, Manitoba, maybe even BC to follow. And that's what Ottawa fears most, the beginning of a decentralized Canada, where provinces start looking south instead of east. But maybe that's exactly what's happening. Because while the federal government talks about unity, Washington talks about opportunity. And opportunity has a way of making borders feel smaller. As of right now, there's no confirmed deal, no document, no official handshake. But in politics, the truth often emerges slowly, through tone, timing, and the things not being said. And right now, what's not being said by both Ottawa and Rejina might be louder than any announcement. So maybe the question isn't if a deal exists, but why both sides seem so determined to pretend nothing's happening. Because for all the talk about cooperation and unity, it sure feels like the political map of North America is starting to redraw itself, quietly, carefully, and completely out of public view. And maybe, just maybe, when the truth finally comes out, we'll realize this moment, right now, was the first sign that something much bigger was already in motion. A deal? Maybe. A strategy? Almost certainly. And while Ottawa might still be in the dark, Saskatchewan might just be stepping into the spotlight.